Welcome back to the GameBlocks tutorials. This tutorial covers talk trees. So one of the unfortunate things about BYOB is that creating talk trees is somewhat of a manual process. If you have a game that is fundamentally built around talk trees, that's really the main way the player navigates the story. That's where you might consider using another tool like the Neverwinter Nights tools, or some kind of adventure game engine. They will make that task somewhat easier. I like BYOB for the control flow of a branching conversation and for the other interactive pieces that go into a game. But for pure branching, other tools might be a little bit better. But you can do the basic stuff in BYOB. It's not that hard, and there are some blocks that came with the toolkit that make this easier. So you can see here's a talk tree. It's created from these pieces of art. They actually have to be built as art, because everything in BYOB is a sprite. So what it looks like, if you go look at the costume for one of these things, it's just there's a text tool here, so you can draw text, and you'll notice that the background is kind of baked in behind it, and it's generally a good idea because BYOB does collision on a per pixel basis. So if you click in between these letters and you don't have the background, the system won't pick it up. So generally that's kind of the one trick to know when building these things. And I haven't really built a generic system, and I don't think it'd be that easy to do to lay these out dynamically based on how many there are and that kind of thing. Generally, covers in most cases just to drag them out manually and position them. So you can see here they're just plopped in somewhere. You just kind of set up your choices the way you want them to look. There's some logic to hide one. Maybe you add that in as well when you do the coding. But hopefully you can cover most cases with just kind of setting something up the way you want, and then at the start of the game you want to hide them. Now I have a global script that hides everything at once, but you also need to think about stacking. So I have these choices here. I've put a go to front command here. This is just a standard BYOB block that's over here in the purple section. It looks so kind of, when the game starts, for each of these sprites, I hide them, I make them go to the front, and I put this, just to be sure, I put this go to there. So once you get them all positioned where you want, copy the coordinates out of here, X and Y, and put them into a go to statement, and you can make sure everything sets up the way it should when the game starts. If you're not making these things fly around like I was for testing some other blocks, maybe you don't need to worry about the go to, but that's kind of your setup for that. And for the background, I used a go to back, or go back 100 layers, kind of a fudge factor there, but just to make sure the background is in the back. I don't know if these things will really get out of sync, but that's one way to make sure that in the course of development something funny doesn't happen, like one of them ends up behind the background. So there we go. So that's the start of the game. A simple way to unhide everything to hide everything is this hide sprites command. So this is one of the blocks in the toolkit. You just create a list using the names of the sprites, so exactly what they're named here. And the way you create a list like that is in variables. There's this round list object that actually creates the list, and you just type in the name you want. If you want to create another one, hit this right arrow and you can type another name. To delete the last name in the list, you press that. So that's how you create a list. I'm not going to recreate this exact one for the sake of this. So at the start of the game, we'll hide everything. This is redundant to the other code you saw in the individual sprites, but just for the sake of illustration, showing this when the game starts, it'll hide everything. So what we want to do is something analogous to that, to unhide the whole set of choices, wait for the user to click on one of them, and then hide everything. So let's do that real quickly. So we'll do that when we click on the character. So we're inside this character. The character is called Multisprite because this is coming from the Multisprite example program that comes with the GameBlocks toolkit. So you can look for that example if you want to see this code in action. But when we're clicked, we're going to show all of the sprites. So we have a show sprites block here, so these are both custom blocks. We'll just right click on this list to duplicate it. Right click, duplicate, and save us some time. So now we should have our set of choices appearing in response to this click. Another special block we're going to use is the one that waits for the click on the items. So down here, custom block, wait for click on sprites. And we will need to rebuild this list because we can't just delete the last two. What we want is the last two and not the first one, so we just got to kind of rebuild. So choices. Let's just cut and paste this, though. You can cut and paste text as well. I'm double clicking on the text to highlight it. Alright, so we're going to wait for a click on one of these two sprites. Now what this block does is just pause the script and just kind of loops here and waits for that click to happen. When it does, it will send a message that has a specific name. It will take the name of the sprite and then add the word clicked after it. So we are going to wait for a message with that specific name. So when I receive, and it's up to us to know what that message is going to be, so it's choice 1 clicked. So no space, capital C there. I don't think the capital makes a difference, but that's what it looks like when it comes out. Choice 1 clicked. Alright, when that happens, we'll say something. Keep it simple. I can't even type a simple word. Okay. And then we'll do the same thing for the other choice. So notice I right-clicked and duplicated that whole script. Okay, check your spelling. Choice. I am using this rubber keyboard that I use so my kids don't mess it up. It's hard to type on. Choice 1 clicked. Shall we check our math? Choice 2 clicked. Alright. There we go. Alright, so we should get those events, show the right dialogue. The last thing we want to do is hide all these sprites once that choice is done. So we can just tack that back onto the original script. So the execution will continue. Once that click happens on one of those sprites, it will continue on here. This is a place where you, just before this wait for click on sprites, you might set a variable to a certain state. You might set player state to talking instead of moving, for instance. And that's a variable you would use if you go to the movement tutorial and watch that tutorial. That's a variable you would use to turn off movement, for instance, so that this talk tree can happen and nothing can proceed until this click happens. So, alright, with all that, let's see if this actually works. Running the game, you saw this blink. This made sure everything was hidden. Click on the character, and there it is. So let's see if I click on the second one. It said, what? Alright, it said 1. Let's click on the first one and see what it says. Maybe I've got the names reversed. Still working. Yeah, let's click on the first one. 2. Alright, well, I just numbered them backward, but you could just redrag them around, I guess. So anyway, that's a basic talk tree working. Like I said, a manual process, but not too painful if you want to build a few of these into a game. Stylistically, and I come more from an adventure game background, so I'm always biased on this, but stylistically speaking, I think it's often more powerful to have the player make choices in the world. So with game actions, like using an object on something, using a game power on something, a weapon, having a battle, solving a puzzle, doing something physical, even if it's just sliding a pin across the desk to one of 3 people or something. You're doing a physical act instead of a dialogue choice. I kind of find that more immersive and powerful. Naturally, not every game is suitable for that model. Some games really do want to let the player feel like they're expressing their opinions about things and having a conversation. So that's when a talk tree would be useful. But if you're thinking of more of an action adventure kind of mindset, I'd advise using these sparingly, and if that's your mode of operation, then this method should be just fine. So those are all the side comments I think I have on TalkTrees. Hopefully this is enough to get you going.